Have you ever wondered what stops a single employee from making a deal that could bankrupt an entire company? Well, the answer is all about something called the law of agency. It's like an invisible rulebook that quietly governs millions of business interactions every single day. So let's dive in and figure out who's really in charge.
I want you to imagine this for a second. A manager at your company goes out and signs a massive contract, a deal they were specifically told not to make. Now the other side is demanding payment. Is your company on the hook? This right here, this is exactly the kind of high-stakes question that agency law is built to answer.
So, how do we clean up our rogue manager's mess? Well, here's our game plan. We're going to figure out who's really on the hook, meet the three key players in this little drama, understand where their power actually comes from, see what happens after the deal is done, and finally tie it all together to see why this is so critical for absolutely any business.
All right, let's start with the big question, the fundamental problem that agency law was created to solve in the first place.
Think about it. A company is really just an idea on paper, right? It can't physically sign a contract or shake a hand. It needs people to act for it. And it's the same for individuals who hire others to get things done. So, the law of agency gives us the rule book for figuring out exactly when the actions of one person legally bind the person they're working for. It's the absolute bedrock of how business gets done.
Okay, so how does this all work in the real world? Well, to get it, you've got to know the cast of characters. It helps to think of every transaction as a kind of three-player drama.
At its heart, agency is just a relationship. You have one person, the agent, who acts on behalf of another person, the principal. But here's the magic trick. The agent's actions have the power to change the principal's legal reality, creating a direct link between them and a third party.
So let's break down these rules. First, you've got the principal. That's the boss, the entity in charge. Then you've got the agent, the one who's actually doing the work on the principal's behalf. And finally, you have the third party, the person who's making a deal with the agent. You see this everywhere. I mean it. When you buy a coffee, the cashier is the agent, the coffee shop is the principal, and you're the third party. So, here's the most crucial part of this whole thing. Understanding where an agent gets their power. This power is called authority, and it really comes in two main flavors.
First up, there's actual authority. This is the simple one, the real, straightforward permission that a principal gives. It can be express, like someone saying, you are authorized to spend up to $5,000. Or it can be implied, just by someone's job. I mean, a CEO doesn't need to be told every day that they have the authority to run the company. It just comes with the title.
Now here's where it gets really interesting, because the difference is huge. Actual authority comes from the private conversation between the principal and the agent. But apparent authority, that's all about public perception. It's based on what the principal leads the outside world to believe the agent can do. And frankly, this is where most businesses get into trouble.
So why does the law even care about the appearance of power? It's for one simple reason, to keep business moving. I mean, can you imagine if third parties had to double-check every single agent's employment contract before making a deal? Commerce would just grind to a halt. Apparent authority is what gives us the confidence to make transactions happen quickly and efficiently. But this power isn't a blank check. For a principal to be bound by it, they must have done something to create that appearance of authority, like giving someone the title of Vice President of Sales. Then, the third party has to have reasonably relied on that title. And this is the real kicker. An agent can't just create their own authority. They can't just walk into a room, puff out their chest, and say, I have authority to do this. The appearance has to come from the principal.
Okay, but what happens after the deal is done, especially when an agent has gone rogue and overstepped their bounds? Let's explore the fallout.
Let's go back to our manager who signed that unauthorized deal. They had no authority, actual or apparent. But what if the company looks at the deal and thinks, you know what? This is actually fantastic for us. Are they just out of luck?
No, not at all. This is where a really cool legal concept called ratification comes into play. You can think of it like a legal do-over button. The principal can look at that unauthorized act and basically say, you know what, I approve. By doing that, they make the contract totally valid, as if the agent had the authority from the very beginning. The process is pretty logical. First, the agent has to have at least claimed they were acting for the principal. Then, the principal finds out what happened. And here's the key. They have to adopt the whole deal, no cherry picking, just the good parts. Once they do that, it's as if the mistake never even happened.
All right, now for a super interesting twist.
What happens when the third party doesn't even know a principal exists? They think they're just dealing with the agent, one-on-one.
This is called undisclosed agency. Here, the agent has actual authority from a principal, but they go into a contract without ever mentioning who they're working for. The third party has no idea. They think the agent is the only other person in the deal.
And the rules here are pretty fascinating. That secret principal can actually step out from behind the curtain and enforce the contract. And once the third party finds out this principal exists, they get a choice. They can hold the agent to the deal, or they can go after the newly revealed principal. It sounds a little strange, but it's all about commercial convenience and reflecting how business often works in the real world.
So let's bring all of this together and really hit on why understanding these rules is so incredibly important for anyone in business.
Look, this is the big picture. Agency law is not some dusty, obscure theory. It is the invisible engine of commerce. It's happening all around us all the time in deals big and small. It provides the hidden structure that allows companies to function and grow through the actions of other people.
So what do you really need to take away from all this? First, in any deal, always identify the three roles. Second, really get that crucial difference between real power, actual authority, and the appearance of power, apparent authority. Third, remember that an unauthorized deal isn't always dead. Ratification can save it. And finally, remember that an agent who oversteps their bounds isn't off the hook. They can be held personally liable for their actions.
And that leaves us with one final thought. Whether you're an employee, a business owner, or just a customer, these rules are always at play. So the next time you're about to close a deal or make a purchase, just take a moment and ask yourself, who holds the real authority here? The answer might be a lot more complex and a lot more interesting than you think.